Renee, thank you so much for being here with us today. And I really appreciate what you have to say today, because I know part of your ministry is for people in their 20s. And as we're talking about invisible illness, there's obviously a lot of men and women who both live with invisible illnesses who are young. And a lot of times that's a big misconception, that all of those who live with different kind of chronic conditions are in their 50s or 60s or 70s. So I wondered if you could just share a little bit with us about you and why you decided to take some time just to talk about your invisible illnesses and how that can encourage others.
Yeah. Well, my name is Renee Johnson Fisher, and I have struggled with various invisible illnesses throughout my life for about 10 years, and actually started when I was in junior high, and dealt with a lot of severe anxiety and was afraid to leave the house. And in high school, it wasn't so invisible. It was eczema, but it took the skin off my face and my feet. And because of that, I struggle with anxiety even years after. And so for me, I am an author and a speaker, and I do that because of the trials that I've overcome. And I want to encourage other young people who might be struggling, but afraid to admit it, or maybe they have anxiety, or just something that they're ashamed of, or they just don't feel like society welcomes them in a way that they compare themselves to everyone else who they think is perfect. So I just use my story to encourage my peers.
That's great. Can you tell us a little bit more about your health struggles? It sounds like you've had a variety of them, and they started when you were quite young. And that must have been difficult as a teenager to go through all the stresses a typical teenager goes through, but then have those on top of that.
Yeah, for me, I struggled consistently from 15, when I was 15 to 25. So I missed out on school. I was homeschooled. So not only did I feel less than because of the different things that I struggled with, the two definitely were, anxiety and eczema, and they kind of went hand in hand. I mean, sometimes it wasn't as bad, sometimes it was worse, but for the most part, it was a really long period where I thought that my life would never amount to anything. I would never do anything with my life. I'd never be able to leave the house. So that's really when I started getting a hold of just journaling and writing, which turned into blogging and even publishing books about my story and trying to encourage other people who feel stuck.
Well, and those are two different conditions. Like you said, they go hand in hand a lot. But I think a lot of people would not think of them as being severe. But when they happen to you and they're in your life, they're quite severe. And I can imagine as a young girl, having anything visual on your skin and such must be, even more stressful, because most of us worry about a pimple or two. But I could see how both the anxiety, would play into that and then grow into its own thing as well.
Yeah, I gained 100 pounds from the medication that I took to get my rash under control. So not only did I feel like my skin was ugly, but I was fat and ugly, and that no guy would ever love me. And so just my self-esteem and I had a horrible outlook on life for so many years. I mean, it's not like it was horrible. I just felt like nothing good would ever come of it. Because I always thought that I'll bounce back, and year after year after year, it just kept progressing and getting worse. So that's when I learned how to just trust God and learn that there's something bigger than me, and that I just really wanted to know more about Him so that I could, be a better person because of the things I was going through, not just so that they would make my life miserable.
Well, it sounds like there were definitely some struggles in there, and you mentioned, trying to figure out what God's plan was for your life. I think there's a lot of young women that have walked in similar shoes to you, and they end up, sometimes taking drugs, alcohol, finding other ways to numb those feelings, especially when you're feeling that sense of not being good enough and all those. What do you think it was that kept you from going down that path on into your 20s and 30s, but instead looking a little bit deeper than that?
Well, I think for me, there was one specific verse when I was in the hospital. My mom was reading to me from Hosea 6, and it said, God has torn us to pieces, and now He will bandage our wounds. And I was just kind of taken back because I literally had to wrap and bandage my face and my feet. It was so bad, and so I just thought, yeah, I wonder if God really can bandage my wounds, and is it something that I did, or and just kind of wrestling through. For me, whenever I encountered a trial, then I learned how to process. How can I learn and grow from this so it can go away faster? Not necessarily that God will just miraculously heal me because I'm a good person or whatever, but I felt like I had a lot to learn. And so I would just, instead of trying to get down on myself and feeling stuck or turning to something that would temporarily take it away, I really wanted to learn and grow so that I could become a stronger person physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
I think a lot of people can relate to the first part of it, and they're trying to decide where to go from there, where to go with all those emotions and feelings, and that you made the choices you did at quite a young age. It says a lot. I know there's people that will be watching this here for Invisible Illness Week that are trying to figure out how to get to that place. If you had to try to explain to someone some different ways or a particular way to find motivation to keep going even when you feel that discouragement, how do you try to get out from under that and not feel overwhelmed by it?
Well, let me say that there was at least 2 times in my life where I thought it was over, I was dying, my health was so bad. Even the doctor called me back and said, there's nothing more we can do for you. What happens when God says no? And I just thought, what? We've never talked about God. What? I just felt so, hopeless. But for me, in those 2 specific instances, the only thing I knew what to do was just to almost humble myself and get on my knees and just ask God, if you don't heal me, this isn't going to work. And in those 2 instances, within 3 days, I was so much better. It was just the weirdest thing. I mean, it took years of the daily struggles, but as far as getting to that point where you think I want to end my life or my life is ending for me, I mean, it came down to as many doctor's appointments. You can only do so much, but then God just really showed me that He was more powerful than any medication or any procedure or whatever. But what keeps me in courage, in life, no matter how bad or how many years, for me was a daily quiet time. And I would just get alone with God, with either a Bible or a devotional or a journal or all 3, and just say, God, I'm really frustrated with you, and here's why. Or I really need you to help me with this, and here's why. And so it's kind of cool to look back. I mean, I think all my journals from those 10 years are 4 or 5 feet tall, because I just didn't give up the fight. Even the days that I wasn't motivated, I would at least be honest with God. And I think that honesty is what transfers over in my blogs or in my writing, because why sugarcoat the truth? I mean, God can handle it. He's the one who created us and is allowing us, for whatever reason, to go through a really sucky situation. So, if you're best friends with someone, you're going to have an honest relationship with them, and that's what's going to make it stronger. So, I guess for me, that's what worked for me. So find what works for you, and be consistent. It's don't just give up. You have to keep trying it. And if it's too much, then try something else. I think one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten from one of my best friends was, if you're bored, God's bored. So find something and work it out yourself. Don't compare yourself to someone else. Who knows why you're going through what God is having you go through, and who knows why He heals your neighbor within a day and you get stuck with something for a year. I don't know, but ask Him and He'll tell you.
You mentioned a couple different turning points there, but somewhere in there you went from a young woman dealing with anxiety and eczema to an author, a speaker, someone who is online with videos such as this, not afraid to be bold in both your words and just in your voice.
I think someone gave me the advice, if I'm waiting until life is perfect, it's never going to happen. So I decided to, while I was working, full-time, or I had worked my way from part-time to full-time. Thankfully, I was with a company at the time that knew I could only handle so much. And because they were so graceful with me, I realized that I was actually stronger than I thought I was. So I decided after, getting used to that I was going to go back to college. And so for me, that was the confidence that I needed to hone in on those skills to be publicly, as you say, bold. And so after I finished my degree with Biola, and I ended up finding an amazing job at a company where I could kind of work with where I was gifted with other speakers and other authors. And then through my blog and Twitter, a literary agent and publisher contacted me. So that was proof that, taking that risk, even when I wasn't sure how could I afford it or health-wise, because I actually went through another anxiety crash when I was trying to do school and work, because I had always believed, those lies that I told myself, I'll never amount to anything, I'll never be good enough, never, never, never. And so it took actually getting back or going on medication, for anxiety, and realizing that I can cope, I can, because I think it's different each season. Sometimes God was saying, or my body was saying, don't take medication, you just really need to fight through this. Or sometimes it was saying, you really need help and you really need to humble yourself and accept help. And so, and it's interesting because I even had another turning point after working at that job for 2 years where it was time for me to transition to my own, self-employed speaking, writing. And for whatever reason, I had thought physically I had finally made it, or I had gotten to the point where I could work, or I could do all these things that I almost was afraid to give them up because I thought that meant I was a failure, or I was going back to being home. And to me, being home meant being a failure because that's where I spent all my time because I was housebound or whatever. And so I really had to wrestle with that and realize that no, I couldn't serve my boss more than full time, and then, writing 3 books. It was just impossible. So I think it's taken me about 2 years of being back at home for me to, replace, okay, I can be in the kitchen. That doesn't mean that I'm overeating, or I'm not going to gain 100 pounds, or, all these things that are just, it's like you remember past the past, and it's just frustrating. I don't want to stay stuck in the past. So then my next book next year is going to be on how to forgive yourself and how to overcome, your past and present to an awesome future, whether that means you're struggling or not, but giving up those, painful memories of the past so that you can actually live your life now.
Tell us a little bit about what your goals are today.
Well, my main goal is to encourage you or spur you forward. And I take that from Hebrews 10:24. I think for me, sometimes I almost resent the fact that I had to go through such trials when I was younger, because people my age didn't know how to be there for me, so it was just me and God. But now I see that as one of the best things, because when I'm trying to encourage someone who's maybe a little bit older, who's my age or even older than my age, I realize that I have a tendency to want to save them, or take them out of the trial immediately, and so much growth happens. So for me, my thing is I will help kick you forward when you feel stuck. The reason why I have, devotionaldiva.com is I have a couple of free things on there. A 30 days to a devotional challenge to kind of show you you can do it. You can talk to God. You can kind of restart that conversation and be consistent. And then a free one if you're thinking about, I don't know if there's any people thinking about marriage or even to strengthen your marriage. I have a free book of questions, ebook. To ask your either future spouse or even your spouse if you'd like to kind of rekindle, I guess, romance. But I always have users or guest posts share their story. and different themes for each month. So I find it encouraging, and I think my readers do, because it's not just me, oh, look at me, look at my story, or, I'm stuck, or this is what that gets old. So I love being able to have, usually every Thursday, I'm hoping to keep that up, someone different share where they've come from, and oh my word, some are so powerful. Some have, been through domestic violence where their ex held a gun to their face. Some have overcome some really powerful things in their marriage or their singleness, or just not being afraid to ask and be honest. So I try to keep my blog as a safe place to be as honest and bold as you would like, because that's kind of my personality. And yeah, it has two free ebooks. You can also order a yearly devotional if you're really struggling and you want something to encourage you for every single day of the year. Faith Book of Jesus, and you can order that at any bookstore. I have the link to Amazon. And my second book, if you're having a hard time with your relationships, is Not Another Dating Book, and that's also, there's a link there to Amazon. And videos of me sharing my story if you just really want to get to know more about who I am, where I've come from, and of course, hundreds and hundreds of blogs that I know will encourage you for sure.
Well, thank you so much for being with us here today, Renee. And I would encourage anyone out there that's in the dating realm, her Not Another Dating Book is great. I know there's a few of you I have seen posting on Facebook that you're in the planning stages for a wedding right now. So there's some great resources at her website. And she also has some wonderful blogs that do specifically discuss her illness, don't you, Renee, that you've shared with me before. So there's lots of things that people can find